Hi, and welcome to Coding is for You. Today we're going to do something very interesting. If you don't know it, Amazon Web Services is the next biggest, hottest thing. The reason it's so big is because they have so many services now that take away the burden of handling computers and networking and all that stuff. They take them away from you and companies. So what you do is you rent compute space as you need it. You don't need a room full of servers anymore with paying a guy just to sit there and maintain them and buy hard drives and backups and all that. That's why it's so cool, because you can actually save money in the long run by not having to pay people to maintain computers and all that stuff. Okay, so Amazon Web Services is the cloud. All that means is that you can host a lot of your backups and your files and your computers and all on their services somewhere else. That's all that means. What we're going to look at today is one specific service of many. They have many, many services, but one of them is called Lambda. Lambda it's almost like just a little bit of code that you can run without having a full server. That's why they call it serverless. So a server is a computer usually that you have with Windows, and it's got all kinds of software and patches and stuff, and then you need to have that server to run some code. With Lambda, you don't need all that stuff. All you need is just one little service that you can set up, and then you can put some code on it and run it. And so this is a very narrow view of what we're going to do today, but that's what we're going to do. So let's get started. Okay, first of all, you need to know that Lambda is actually, behind the scenes, it's run in Linux. That's why you can't open up Visual Studio, Microsoft Visual Studio, create a program, and just push it out there and expect it to run. That's why we're using Visual Studio Code, because it uses .NET Core, which is cross-platform. That's why we're using .NET Core. It's a very important concept. .NET Core allows you to do C#, which is what we're going to do today, and run it in Lambda or on Linux or any platform. That's what's so cool about it. As long as you have .NET Core, you can run it on other platforms. So the first thing you need to do, let's go to .NET Core SDK, type that in, and you need to have this installed. Go ahead and install, in my case, .NET Core 2.2, download the SDK, install it, okay? I'm not going to go through that. You just have to do it. The next thing you need, assuming you don't already have it, is Visual Studio Code. And we're going to download that, and I'm also not going to go through that. I happen to be running Windows, but you don't have to. That's what's so cool about it. Download your version and have Visual Studio Code installed. The next thing you need is an account on Amazon Web Services. Now, what they do is they give you this free tier for like a year where you don't have to pay anything, as long as you keep the services very minimum. And that's what we'll do. Anytime you create a service on Amazon Web Services, be sure and just delete it right afterwards. That way you don't accrue any cost. And that's not hard to do. I'll show you how to do that. But go ahead and create an account, sign up, give them your credit card. Don't worry, it's not a big deal. You can always cancel it if you want. But you have to have an account to complete this task, because we are using their services and they do require a credit card to use their services, which makes sense. Okay, so I'm in the AWS Management Console, and this is where we're going to build everything. So the way we're going to do that, there's many different ways, but the way we're going to do this is we're going to build a project in Visual Studio Code. We're going to take the code and we're going to push it up to Amazon Web Services in Lambda, and then test it and run it in a couple different ways. All right, so first of all, let's open Visual Studio Code. Now, before we go any further, I will tell you that I got a lot of my information from of course, from the web. I will provide a link to what you can see here, and I recommend you click on the link and read it. It will be in the description. Read through this. It gives you the commands that you need. I'm just going to show you the important ones. So we have Visual Studio Code open, and we want to go down here to our extensions. And we're going to type in C#, and let's get this one called Powered by OmniSharp. Let's get this installed. Go ahead and click Install. And let that install, and this will help us out as an extension. There's tons and tons of extensions. That's what's really cool about Visual Studio Code. So I had to close Visual Studio Code down and open it again, but if you go here, you can see that you have it installed. That's going to help us out a little bit. Okay, so the next thing we want to do, I like to keep everything nice and clean, but let's create a folder from which we can work. And I'm going to do that right here. And in the temp, I'm going to create a folder called AWS. Okay, good enough. Now, we have a folder called AWS. I should have left that open. Let's open that folder, and everything that you did should show up right here in this folder. So it's totally empty right now. We see that I hate this little welcome screen. It annoys me. All right, so your folders are up here at top. Your debug is right here, and your extensions are right there. But we're here in the folders, and we have nothing in it, and that's okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to install some templates. This is a very important part. So let's hit Control and tilde, which is the next to the 1. Control tilde, and you can kind of see it somewhere in here. What we need is a terminal. So you can also go here, Control New Terminal, and your terminal is going to be your best friend, okay? So you're going to install a lot of things here. If you go through here, and I'm doing it for you, if you look at this command right here, we can copy it, and we can paste it in Visual Studio Code. And what it's doing is it's installing the Amazon Lambda templates that we are going to use and steal from. Once you have a template, you can create it, and it will just create the project for you. And it does so much for you. Okay? And that's what's going to get us up and started. So run this command, .NET new -I amazon.lambda.templates : We run that. Now, notice it shows you all the templates that are now installed. And look at this. We've got all these Lambda templates. See all those? What we want to do is what we're going to be doing is using this very simple Lambda empty function. Later on, when you want to connect to Lambda S3, S3 is Amazon Web. See, all of these are tools on AWS that you need to learn. But Lambda S3, I believe, is like a bucket. It's like a folder. You can move files to and from Amazon Web Services and using these Lambda functions and using Lambda S3. But what we're doing, we're not doing any of that. We're just doing Lambda empty functions. So the next command, I'm going to type clear. I like to type clear and clear everything out. So now, if you wanted to take this command, .NET new -all, .NET new -all, you can see all the templates that are installed, and we just did the Lambda ones, but whenever you do a .NET new, as you've seen before, you can pick some of these different project types, and it will create templates for you. That's what it's for. So let's do our template. Okay, so now we're going to use the template, and the way we do that is we're going to steal this line right here, and we're going to change it a little bit. Let's copy that, paste it. Now, what we want to do is we're going to use that template, and we're going to do a .NET new lambda.empty function. We're going to give it a name, and it's going to go in that folder right there, the AWS folder. But let's give it something that's a little bit better and simpler. My project. Okay. And then we don't need a profile right now. We'll look at this line. We're going to put it into a region. We're telling it what region we're going to. And what that is Amazon has all these different regions up here. And what it is they spread out all their computing across the world. That way, if something goes down, you can use another server somewhere else. Like if there's a major fire in Virginia and that whole thing goes down, you can use Ohio. And if that goes down, you can use California. So it's this distributed idea. And you have to tell it, usually, we're going to stick in U.S. East, North Virginia, and that happens to be U.S. East 1. So what that will do for us is later it'll create a setting. So we're going to do this .NET new lambda empty function. We're giving it a name. We're going to hit enter. Now, look what it did. It created a new project. Now, it actually created two projects. The first one is the source project. That's what we're going to be dealing with. I'm not going to worry about tests right now. We can do that later in the future. Tests are just ways to run and test your code, but we'll just totally ignore that for now. Okay, so now what we want to do is we need to build this code. We need to make sure it builds and runs. Let's open up the function that we are actually coding in, and look, we've got C#. Let me get rid of all the comments and garbage that we do not need. Now remember, this template built all of this for us. Notice how it's saying, oh wait, I don't know what any of this stuff is. And down here on the bottom right, it says there are unresolved dependencies. Please execute the restore command to continue. I'm going to go ahead and just click restore and let it do its thing. And it's going to install all the dependencies that it's at. It knows that we have dependencies, and so it's going to install them for us. And look, it's doing the work for us. If you wait long enough and you have patience, it will fix it. So now look, all of our dependencies have been resolved. Now let's go back to the terminal. Let's clear it out. Let's run a command. We're going to do a restore manually on our own. And the way you do that is, notice we're on ctemp AWS. That's kind of a problem because AWS folder is way up here. We need to be way down here where our project file is. And to do that, we're going to do a dir. That's a directory listing. And notice the next folder underneath is my project. So I'm going to do a change directory into my tab project. Hit enter. Now we're going to do a dir again. Now remember, we have a source project and a test project, so we want to go into the source, cd src, dir again, cd my project, tab. If you start to type and you hit tab, it will bring it up. Clear. I'm going to clear it out. dir. Okay, now we are actually, this whole path is in the same directory as your project file. That's very important. Otherwise, you will not be able to do this. .NET restore. A .NET restore will kind of do a dependency check and make sure that all your links and dependencies are there. Now we're going to do a .NET build. And we're building, so that means everything works. But of course, it's an empty template. So now let's take a look at the code. So it gave us a single function over here, and all it does, ignore all this stuff up here. You know, it's just, those are just helpers. We have a namespace called myProject in a class called function, and we have a function handler. It takes in a single string, and it returns an input.toUpper. So whatever you type in, like hello, lowercase, it'll take everything and return it in an uppercase. So we're putting something in and getting something back, which is a string. All of that is good and fine. Let's clear this out. Now, let's finish up and compile this code into one single unit and push it up to Amazon Web Services so we can use it in Lambda. All right, so we're going to do .NET publish. So what that's doing is it's building, and it's also creating one single folder with everything you need. Let's take a look at our folder. So our folder is deep down here. I have it under C, temp, AWS, my project, source, my project again, bin, debug, Netcore app 2.1, publish. All right, my publish created this publish directory deep inside the code. And all of these files right here are what we need to push out to Amazon Web Services so we can use Lambda. It needs all of these compiled files to run what we just did. Now notice that it's under this Netcore app 2.1. If you have problems with your SDK and your version, you need to look in the project file and make sure that all your versions work. So look at this Netcore app 2.1, and we are using, we installed that SDK. We have .NET Core 2.1. So we're going to take all of these files right here. We actually don't need them all, but we'll do it anyway. We're going to take them all, and we're going to put it into a zip file. And the reason why is because Amazon likes, for C#, it likes zip files. So we're going to right click, we're going to send to compressed zip folder I'm going to name it files, myfiles.zip, okay? Now, you have your Amazon Web Service, you have your Amazon Web Services console. You're going to type in Lambda. And notice I have shortcuts up here. I've got API Gateway. That's a way to create an API so you can call it from over the internet. I've got S3, that's buckets, that's folders. I've got CloudFormation. These are all different tools, but we're using Lambda. You're going to type in Lambda here and find the service, and there it is right there, Lambda. Okay, I've already created a function already. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to click there. I'm going to go delete. That way we all start fresh, okay? Now, back to Lambda. You should see something like this. Now, we are in that, I'm just going to stay in this one region, US East 1. I'm going to go to create function. I'm going to go down here and say, notice that you can do all different types of languages. You can do Ruby, Python, Java. We did .NET Core 2.1. That's what we're doing. So I'm going to click on that, and we're going to tell it, I'm going to call it my function. Now, it wants to have a role. So the first time you do this, you might need to create a new role, and just create a role and give it a name. I already have a role, so I'm going to choose an existing role, and then I'm going to pick it. I'm going to call it service role, my role. Just create a blank role, and don't worry about it, and click on it, and then select it. And we're going to create function down here like this. Okay, so we have my function, and don't worry about all this other stuff going on. It's advanced stuff. We're going to go down here to the code, and guess what? We called it a C# app. And so if you were to have chosen Node, for example, you could type in your code right here. You could type your code in right here. But we didn't. We did C# 2.1 right there. We're going to upload a zip file, that same file that we just compressed, that we compiled. We're going to upload it here. I got to go to C, temp, AWS, my project, source, my project, bin, debug, netcore app, publish, and then there are my files that I zipped up. They're actually all of these other files. Click on it, and don't worry about all this other stuff. We're going to hit, we already did upload. Now, the other important point is this right here. You have to tell AWS Lambda which function that you're firing off. Now let's go back and look. Click on the info right here, and it's giving you a sample, but this isn't right. We need to click on info, and it tells you the way you do this. It has to have 4 parts to the name. You have to have the assembly, the namespace, the class name, and the method name. So what that means is the assembly is the DLL that you created, my project. Let's go ahead and put that in right now. My project. That's the assembly. The next one is namespace. Go to your code. What's the namespace? It's right here. My project. This is what we built. Class name. What's the class name? It's right here. Function. And then the actual name of the function. And then the actual name of the function, which is function handler. Copy. Paste. So we have my project's assembly, then we have the namespace, we have the name of the class. It's not a good class name, by the way. Function is not a good class. It's confusing. And then function handler is the name of the function. We're going to hit save. Now, your function should work as it is. So let's look at it again. All we did was we provided string input. Don't worry about the context for now. And it returns anything you put in uppercase. So let's do a test. So the way you do tests is you go here and you configure a test. You can have many, many tests. So that's what you're doing is you're creating a test. You're creating your first test. Let's create a test. And this particular test is trying to help you out with is for a code that takes JSON. And we're not doing that. We're doing, quote, put in double quotes, hello, it worked in lowercase, and we're going to give it a name. Let's say my first test, and we're going to hit create. So we just created a test, okay? Now, guess what? My first test is right here. We're going to click on my first test and hit test. Guess what? It succeeded. We worked right here. And so you click the details, and so what we typed in was reflected back to us in uppercase. As a very simple example, you can do way, way, way more with this, depending on your imagination. but the test worked, and that's what's important. So let's say we did another test. Let's show you what it looks like if it didn't work. Let's do a create new, and they have this hello world thing down here. And this is the first time I did this, it failed. And I created test 2, and I created this test. See, it's passing that JSON in there. Now I pick test 2 and I run it, and guess what? It failed. And it took me a while to figure this out. But it tells you what's wrong. You need to go through, you need to learn how to debug these types of things. And it's telling you that the string needs to be quoted. And what's really happening is this right here is taking a simple string and it's returning a simple string. And what we did in test 2 is we passed JSON and not what it wanted. So my first test will pass, the second test will not. Now you can do a lot more with this. You can create an API gateway that calls this code. It can connect to all the other tools out there in Amazon Web Services. This is unlimited. Just because you saw this simple little test does not mean that's all it does. It does lots and lots more in many different languages. So I just connected you to Visual Studio Code free and C#, and you created a Lambda function and you got it to work. That's pretty darn cool. Please like, subscribe, hit the little alert button if you want more videos like this. Let me know if you like Amazon Web Services. I'll make more of these videos. Check the links below. I'll have some relevant book links, and if you click on it, I get credit because I'm an associate. Good luck, and let me know if you liked it.